So moving right along, despite how simple that seemed when I just explained it, most of us, the approach that we take is to wing it, right? So as our pay increases, you know, our lifestyle increase. So we buy the newer car, the new wardrobe, we get a bigger house, and so we have to kind of match up to our pay increase, so to speak. So I come from a culture that you are actually measured based on what others think of your situation, and so it doesn't matter what the financial stress that it's causing on you in the background. Having that lifestyle up front is what's important. So at some point we have to nip that in the bud, right? So some of the tips that I can give you throughout our entire journey, we will have several financial milestones. So whether it is that first car, whether it is our wedding, our house, our family vacation, we're suddenly realize that we need to be debt free, or, you know, so some of these milestones that we have as a financial goal, working with a financial advisor will help you to kind of put everything together. So I put those maps online because I'm going to go back to my GPS as much as I can. So if you're leaving from Niagara Falls and you have some stops to make along the way, I'm sure you would not go from Niagara to Oakville, then back to Hamilton, and then go to Mississauga, right? We will plan our day more effectively and say, okay, I plan my appointment for Hamilton first, then I'll go to Oakville, and then I get to Mississauga. So my day would be more productive. So it's the same thing. Having that financial advisor will help you to put your entire journey into perspective. So my tip for you on this page is basically have a long-term and several short-term goals. So an example of a short-term goal is I am going to build my emergency fund of $1,000 by April 30th, right? So it has to be specific, so you know exactly how much you're going to get. You know exactly by when you're going to get it, and so on. So, and an example of a long-term goal is like, I want to save for my down payment. So again, working with a financial advisor can actually help you to figure out if I need to buy that house within 3 years, this is how much I need. If I'm going to buy a house for $700,000, this is my deposit. These are the activities that I'll do to put down that down payment. Okay, so I want to spend some time on breaking down the budget, because if you master doing your budget, then all the other pieces will fall in place. So make sure that you have a list of all your income sources. Yeah, so your salary, your side hustle, if you get child support, your alimony, your annuity, all the different sources just laid out all on the table. And we're going to match up your expenses to those. So a lot of us, if I ask you, what's your monthly expenses, you have to go think about it. So we want you to lay down all of your expenses. So your rent, your mortgage, we know you have some variable expenses, so your heat, your hydro, what you pay to your credit cards, your groceries, and don't forget to include your savings. You have to always remember to pay yourself first. So accounting, and my tip for you when you're putting together that budget is account for every dollar. So I personally, although I'm an accounting professional, doing a monthly budget, showing all my monthly expenses in one line and all my income in one line doesn't work for me. I personally like to track my cash flow. So I align my due dates with my paycheck. So if I know my pay is coming in on the 15th of every month, I make sure that my mortgage payment comes out right after, or my hydro bill is the 17th or the 18th. So you work with your the supplier to actually get your due dates right after money is flowing in. And so that's the better way of managing your money. So the other thing that I want to mention is that you want to, I'm going to just talk a little bit about the spreadsheet that I have. So I like the visual of a calendar. So it tells me I can slot in when I get pay. So if you notice on the 8th of the month, I got $1,000. And also on the 22nd of the month, I got $1,000. I track in my groceries or all of my other expenses. So what I want you to consider is that as I'm tracking my budget, say I budget at 150 for groceries and my bill for this week comes to 175. Just like a GPS, when you go off on track, what you do, you recalculate. So figure out where that additional $25 will come from. What can you forego that was in your original budget that can make up for that additional expense, right? Next step is to build an emergency fund. So nowadays, it's easier for people to comprehend why we always say have an emergency fund with all the layoffs that happened due to the pandemic. But other emergencies that might come up, you might have like a car repair, you need a new battery you can't start, you have additional expenses from medical that is not covered by OHIP or your regular insurance and so on. So now people understand what are some of the emergencies that can come up. Ideally, your emergency fund should be a minimum of 3 months. 3 months the cost to live for 3 months. So 6 to 8 months, I would say, is a better cushion for us to exist. But I would say start somewhere. Get that first $1,000, because the habit that you get into to save that $1,000 is where you would actually develop that habit of putting away a little. Okay, so another person might think, okay, I can already make ends meet. Where am I going to get that first $1,000 from? You know, I would say, when you're doing your budget, what are the things that are there that are nice to have? What are the things that you don't really need, but you do it anyway, right? I pay gym membership, but I've never been to the gym in 2 years. Guess what? You can start funnel that money towards your emergency fund. A big area that it's a kind of a shock factor to some people, I would say. We spend all of our time collecting stuff. What do you have in your house that you could sell to get that money, right? And while you're building that fund, try to avoid additional debt. I'm going to move on to the next step, which is try to clear off your high interest debt. So when you think about this, when you add up all the interest that you pay on a monthly basis, what could you be doing with that money? Could that be making an additional payment on your mortgage? Could you be putting it away for your kids' education, investment, and so on? So credit card rates or fees are compounded. And so what we don't know sometimes in terms of the fine prints, if you miss a payment, it may move from 19% to 25%. So you want to be able to know your numbers so that when you so you want to know your numbers so that you're not paying for the same item that you thought you use your emergency fund, which is your credit card. So you're not paying for the same things over and over again. right? So consider doing a balance transfer. Some people refer to it as consolidation of debt. If you have a mortgage coming up and you have equity in your home, maybe it's time for you to roll that cost in. Interest rate is at an all-time low for mortgages, but then the credit card interest rate have not budged, right? So the other thing that I want to do is kind of have an debt management plan. There are two approaches. A snowball approach is where you list all of your credit cards and you try to pay off the lowest balance first. And that is really so that you have a quick win. If you have a $500 card and you pay it off, you're like, okay, check, my first card is done, right? Then you move on to the next balance. The avalanche approach is really where you target the higher interest first. So when you list all of your credit cards, the one that you're paying the highest interest on, you pay it off first, right? And then you repeat and so on. Okay, so there are other tips that we do, but Jackie, so my other tip would be like retirement and insurance, and I think Jackie will cover some of these in her presentation. I just wanted to spend my last couple of minutes talking a little bit about how do we pivot with all the pandemic. You're like, Keisha, you're telling me to have an emergency fund or to pay off my debt, but where's the money coming from, right? It may not be feasible for you to do everything that we discussed right away, but starting is the best. The best time to start is now. So I just wanted you to know that the key thing to consider during this pandemic, you want to keep any and all income sources open. So any income, anywhere you can be getting money from, you want to keep that source open and ongoing. So if you're still employed, that's awesome. So continue to cut back on your expenses and start building that emergency fund. We're not driving to work nowadays. So one of the things that we could be doing is saving the gas that we put away, the savings that we have on gas or childcare expenses. The childcare centers are closed. If you're unemployed, you want to try to verify whether or not you qualify for any of those government programs, the CRB and so on that are out there. So please note that your goal, please note that when you get money from the government in terms of CERB or CRB or any other sources, it is considered income in that tax year. And so you have to report it on your tax return, and it is taxable. So just so you know that, I just wanted to put that in there. Also, always strive to break even. So breaking even, all I'm saying is don't spend more than what you're earning, right? So try to break even. So for my students and new graduates, a lot of people don't think that you find all of this stressful because they're like, oh, you don't have a mortgage or you don't have any money. Stress, what's your problem, right? But I feel you, I am with you. So what you want to do is keep that part-time job, right? It may not be the field that you studied in, but guess what? Time is your best friend. You can recover from all of what's going on, right? So you can also verify whether or not you benefit for any government program. You can defer your student loan, and so on. So for people that are in lots of debt and whatever, try as you may, your fixed expense or your standard expense is just not covering your income is just not covering all of those expenses. I would say if you must, the lower the interest rate for the debt that you're going into is the better. So use a line of credit where possible and only use what's absolutely necessary. What I mean by that, if your expenses is it's 2,500 and your income is just 2,000, only increase your debt by that 1,500. Don't think about, okay, I need to buy my kid a gift, or I need that dress, or I just make do with what you have, and save, and just use what is absolutely necessary. Thank you so much. That is all for now. I'm going to hand back over to Stacy.
Thank you so much, Keisha, for that very insightful and practical presentation with really helpful tips. I would now like to move on to our second guest speaker, Miss Jackie Porter. Jackie is an award-winning financial planner, best-selling author, and speaker who has helped thousands of clients grow their net worth, build a fortress around their finances, and keep more of their cash flow in their pockets. She has been featured on CBC, The Agenda with Steve Paikin, Sun TV, and BNN. Jackie is also a regular contributor to Investment Executive, Wealth Professional, and the Globe and Mail. Jackie recently named Mackenzie Female Trailblazer of the Year for 2019. She's a co-author of Single by Choice and Chance. Jackie is a leading expert in women and money and a powerful voice in the world of women's financial empowerment. We're so happy to have you join us today, Jackie.
Hi there. Having some fun with my technology. Really good to see all of the people who have shown up for this session. I think what we're talking about is so important. Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you, Olive Branch of Hope, for having me here. As Stacy mentioned, I'm very passionate when it comes to financial empowerment, and I'm going to be very transparent. I'm biased because I am a woman and a woman of color, which makes me biased, and I'm always transparent about that. It's also Black History Month, and I would be remiss if, as a financial planner, financial literacy educator, which is something I do regularly, I didn't speak about the issues around financial racism and how these issues are being underscored in a pandemic. So, why it's important to talk about that, because one of the biggest reasons for lack of generational wealth in our community is our attitudes toward insurance. And I'm just right here to say that I've heard, when speaking to people of color, and I know this isn't a reflection of all of you who are on this call, your attitudes, but I've heard in the Black community over and over again, in the years of doing this, and I've been in the industry for 24 years, people of color sometimes, when I talk to them about generational wealth and passing on wealth to the future generations, and now we're seeing some of the effects and the impacts of not doing that, sometimes I've gotten feedback that looks like this, that sounds like this. I don't believe in insurance. I don't know if any of you have heard this before, but I've heard the feedback I've gotten sometimes is, I just don't believe in insurance. And I'm here to tell you, insurance is not a religion, right? It doesn't care if you believe in it or not. It's about helping to protect the cash flow for you and for your loved ones. So insurance doesn't care if you believe in it. The whole role of insurance is to protect you, to protect your family, and of course, to create generational wealth, to start to level the playing field for the Black community. So I just wanted to start talking about that. I'm going to share just really quickly my story. One of the reasons I'm so passionate about generational wealth and wealth for the Black community is myself, growing up as a young person, I lost my mother at 16. She didn't have insurance. I worked 3 jobs to basically put myself through school, university. And I was able to create my own 7-figure net worth, but I have to tell you, it came at a very high price. And so I've seen firsthand, had to live firsthand through, what it looks like when you don't plan and you don't prepare. My mother never expected to die, right? She died at the age of 36. She didn't expect to die. And I can tell you, all the people who, go to hospitals every day never expect to be there. So I just want you to keep all of these things in mind as we go through what we're going to look at now when we talk about building your insurance IQ, looking at the chances of getting ill. I want you to kind of think through that as we look at, some of the risks, because you can help me as we go through some of these risks and what they look like. So I'm going to just now, I don't know why I'm having technical challenges today. So I'm going to bypass this slide because this is who I am today. And I always say to people, you never really know who somebody really is when you look at where they are today. You got to go through and look at their journey as to why they are where they are today. So that's why I was sharing my story with you of, being on my own since I was 16. That's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about risk management. I'm so passionate about financial literacy, especially, again, I'm biased because I'd love to see people of color, start to scale, start to build wealth, generational wealth for their families and for their future. So we're going to talk about the bridges of risk because we've all heard the saying, health is wealth, right? And that's actually never been more true than right now. But let's take a look at the types of risks that we face over the course of our lives. So I want you guys to think, what do you think the chances are of your house burning down? Anybody have an idea of what are the odds of your house burning down? Did you know that the chances of your house burning down are 1 in 19,287? Yet, the bank won't let us buy a house without having house insurance, right? We know this. Now, let's move on. What do you think the odds of getting in a car accident is in this day and age? This stat is a couple years old, so it might even be more now, especially if you live in the city like I do. But the odds of actually getting into a car accident is 1 in 1,722, right? Again, can you drive a car without car insurance? The answer is no. Okay, now, the actual odds of dying before age 65 is 1 in 78. Again, the government doesn't mandate us to have life insurance, but here's what the actuaries know. 1 in 78 of us will pass away each year before 65. The problem is we don't know if it's us or if it's our neighbor, right? And the insurance companies, they've done the math. They're risk sharing with you. That's really the strategy of insurance, is they're risk sharing with you. They know how many people are going to go each and every year. And because we don't know, and if the financial impacts to us is great, that's really, in a nutshell, why insurance is important. And, there are different types of life insurance. And, if I had more time, I'd go into a lot more detail. But suffice it to say, there's term insurance and there's whole life insurance or permanent insurance. Term insurance is really more an inexpensive way to buy insurance, especially if you have a greater need for insurance than you have money. So for example, there's a 10-year term, 20-year term, 30-year terms have become popular. And these are typically used for things like buying a mortgage, like you're buying a house and you need mortgage coverage. So you buy as much coverage as you can. You buy typically the amount you need for the principal of the mortgage. So if you and a partner have gone into buying a house together, your spouse, then if something happens to them, you can still continue to afford to live in the house because you can pay off the mortgage. So term insurance is a very typical example of why people buy term insurance. The other option, whole life, is more about and we see these scenarios so much, which is, I don't know if you're on social media. I'm probably on more than I'd like to be quite honest. But you see those GoFundMe pages where somebody passes away, they never planned to. Again, nobody ever plans to die, right? So people didn't think to have a plan for that, and they're asking the community to help. And I see this sometimes as well with older people who, we know what the stats are, yet we don't plan. And so permanent insurance is for a long-term need for insurance. So I'm someone who I don't want to be a burden to my family. And as I age, I don't want to leave that responsibility to my children. I have permanent insurance to pay for funeral costs, all the costs associated with, settling my estate if I have debt and I don't want to leave all of those things in my estate. Permanent insurance is to say, I don't know what age I'll pass away. I could live to 100. And so if I get term insurance, I'm not going to have coverage for that. And I can give you a prime example. I probably have a million examples in my head based on doing this job for so long. But I think of a couple who, the lady got cancer in her 70s. Her term insurance was going to expire at age 80. And she was 79 and a half. She was like 79, 6 months. So her policy, she kept renewing it, was going to expire. And here she was dealing with cancer. And after all of the years she's owned this policy, if she didn't pass away within 6 months of the policy actually expiring, it would have never been useful to her. So that's some of the reasons why we have to think through, what are our needs for insurance? Is it a long-term need like funeral, final expenses, estate planning? With a permanent insurance, you have opportunities to build savings in there to help pay for the policy down the road. Term insurance, you don't build any savings, but it's to really fill the need. So just keep that in mind as you, think through your needs for life insurance. Now we're going to talk about disability insurance. I don't know if people are aware, but I do know that people who are part of Olive Branch of Hope understand the needs for, disability, critical illness insurance. Because if you've gone through these types of illnesses, you understand the financial impacts. But now you need to understand the risk. Under age 65, 1 in 35 chances. Over age 65, 1 in 6. And again, the government doesn't mandate you to have these plans. What are the impacts? I'm sure if you've been to an Olive Branch of Hope event, and that's one of the reasons I'm so passionate, my mother passed away of cancer, is, you understand, you hear these stories. And this is why an organization like the Olive Branch of Hope is so important, so vital to the community to help people who are going through cancer deal with not just the social, but the financial impacts, because they are real. And disability, there are different types of disability insurance you can get. What you should do is look at the disability coverage. If you are an employee, check the type of disability coverage you have at your work. Are you covered for disability? How much is it covering you for? Is it covering you for your salary? Sometimes disability plans at work might cover just a basic amount, which might be less than what you need. And the worst time to find out how much disability coverage you have is when you need it, right? You want to know ahead of time. So read the fine print, look at your benefits booklets. This is some of the things I do with my clients is, what does your benefits booklet say? Let's have a worst case scenario plan, see what your benefit booklet says about what you're covered for so that you're in the best scenario to create financial resilience. And then we're going to talk about, critical illness, right? Critical illness, 1 in 3. Is the actual, what's the risk, what's the odds? And as I said, it's good to understand, because sometimes people don't know they even have coverage at work, to see, what kind of benefit you have for critical illness through your work. Also have a look if you have this type of coverage, because sometimes people tell me, oh, I have this critical illness coverage through my bank. And what you should know is if you never did medicals for the critical illness insurance you took out when you maybe got your mortgage and you didn't do medicals, they asked you some basic questions. What happens is the insurance is actually not underwritten until the time of claim. So what that means is the insurance company might be taking premiums for you, but they don't actually decide if you're eligible for the coverage until you make a claim. So that basically means they could turn around and say, because by the way, you're not the insurance company's client, the bank is, they can say to the bank, sorry, we would have never covered her or him. And so here's your money back for paying for however many years you have the coverage, and that's that. So again, when you're dealing with any type of insurance plan, especially if you're not buying it directly from the insurance company, read the fine print. Typically group plans you're fine because they're covering a big enough group that they don't necessarily need your health information, but definitely through, if you're getting it through like a creditor coverage through the bank, you want to read the fine print, especially if you didn't do medicals, to make sure you know what you're covered for. So critical illness coverage it pays a lump sum on diagnosis. And sometimes people ask me, what's the difference between disability and critical illness? Disability pays you a regular income if you can't do the duties of your job. So a typical disability policy will cover you in something called a regular occupation, which means you can't do the duties of your job after a period of time. So typically after 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days, if you can't do the duties of your job and you're disabled, based on that definition, then after 30, 60, or 90 days, it will pay you a regular income, typically up to 70% of your pre-disability salary. So again, all of these things you have to read in your contract to see how much of that, what does 66% mean in terms of my circumstances, and is it enough for my lifestyle? As Keisha was saying earlier, you need to know your numbers so you know how much it costs you a month to live to understand what you need to protect. So you don't necessarily need to cover your income all the way up to what you earn, but you definitely need to cover what you need to protect in terms of maintaining your current lifestyle. So check if you have personal disability, confirm it covers your lifestyle. If you have an employment disability plan, ensure that it covers you for the minimum lifestyle you need and that you don't have a contract that just covers an average lifestyle. So you got to do the math on that and see what your booklet says. Critical illness, on the other hand, doesn't have anything to necessarily do with you not being able to do the duties of your job. It actually has to do with being diagnosed with an illness. And, there's usually 21 illnesses covered, but the most popular illnesses, 80% of the claims for critical illness are for cancer, heart attack, stroke. That's the majority of the claims that we pay out for critical illness. Just like life insurance, you can get critical illness on a 10-year basis, a 20-year basis. Most policies, you can also get policies that cover you to age 65 or to age 100. The premiums, vary depending on the type of plan that you have. My typical client that gets like critical illness coverage are looking at, coverage to cover a mortgage or cover, at least 1 or 2 years of their lifestyle. So just consider again, how you want to use these plans to protect your lifestyle, especially, we know in a pandemic, we just never know the uncertainty we'll face, right? We never expected to be in a pandemic either, right? The only other quick thing I was going to say about disability coverage is just also pay attention to the definition of disability. These are some things to look at in your contract. Disability, again, means not being able to do the duties of your job. Sometimes in group plans, after 2 years, your disability plan can go to any occupation. And what that means, unless you can't do any job, the disability plan won't pay you. So again, you just kind of have to look at, what are the implications for my long-term financial security? And, what's your contingency plan? This is why we're talking about insurance and talking about, protecting your lifestyle and protecting generational wealth. What's your worst case scenario? Do you have a worst case scenario plan that includes insurance? These are important questions to ask yourself as well around, life, disability, critical illness protection. And the questions are, who depend on you to maintain their lifestyle? So if you have children, looking at things like term life insurance, if you're looking at affordability, might be an important factor because you have children depending on you to maintain their lifestyle. And what would be the financial impact to them if you passed away? Finally, ask yourself, what would happen to your lifestyle if you faced a disability or critical illness? Again, making that contingency plan to protect your lifestyle. You should know that typically as individuals, we experience 8 major stages of our life, and each will impact our financial priorities and our cash flow. Keisha was referring to that as well. So your first job, that's when you're between your first job and retirement. That's when you're going to make, between that time period is going to be when you're making the most amount of your money. So what is the impact if you became disabled. Disability is probably a bigger priority then because you're on your own looking at insurance. And so living benefits, when we're talking about critical illness and disability, we're talking about living benefits. So that might be where your focus is when you're building your worst case scenario plan. However, when you get married, again, if you have someone who's also depending on you for your cash flow, that might be when you're looking at some type of life insurance to maintain the lifestyle of you and your spouse. Moving on, if you have children, again, a time to revisit your income protection. Buying a house, again, that might be a time you look at mortgage protection. Losing your job is, I think Keisha covered that really well because she talked about, some of the financial impacts of, losing your job and looking for, where you can find income, reducing your expenses as much as possible. But also, if you're in that situation, you don't have disability coverage anymore. So there are plans available to cover you for a short-term need for disability coverage, because if you get disabled then and you're not in a job, what's the financial impact? Again, another scenario is divorce. How should you be changing your insurance policies in a scenario where you're divorced? And the thing about life is if you're not thinking about the future, kind of like what Keisha was talking about, where you're not thinking, okay, I'm going to start this journey and I might be in, Mississauga in another half an hour. What do I need to look out for? And then I might be in, after that further on my journey, what do I need to be thinking of next? All of that is about future thinking, future planning, thinking about the future before it happens. Our society tends to encourage us to live day to day. Right? And when we live day to day, that's when we are actually the most vulnerable. We have to start thinking, longer term. So if I'm actually in a scenario and I'm buying a house, having children, what's the next stage? The next stage might be retirement. So when I'm already in that stage where I'm, everything's good, I can start thinking about the thing I want next and start planning for that. So future planning is another really key, a key tip I can share with you about building wealth, just so that you're organized and you're, again, in the best scenario to protect your long-term financial security. And then retiring is another stage of life where you might be thinking at that point, okay, my term insurance, I might want to convert it to a permanent coverage, maybe thinking about that as you get closer to retirement, so that you're now looking at your needs for permanent insurance for estate planning purposes for final expenses. When you're in your retirement stage, that might be a time to also think about things. One of the things I didn't talk about, things like long-term care insurance, which is to, pay for care if you need it, if you are trying to avoid the nursing home and get care in your home. So that's another type of insurance. But again, we just always want to be thinking ahead in a way to become more financially resilient. And again, think through, how do these stages affect your long-term cash flow plans? So planning for future insurance is all about reviewing your circumstances on a regular basis, recognizing that your financial circumstances are going to change based on where you are in your life, and recognizing that new priorities are going to emerge that you'll need to integrate into your overall plan. So this chart is really to say knowledge is at the center and the heart of every plan you put together. We spoke today specifically about cash flow management and risk management, but consider where you are in your life, what's important to you. That piece of knowledge will mean that you can start thinking through, what do I want to focus on? Because we only have limited resources, right? So based on the limited resources, where do we want to allocate them based on where we are in our life and our priorities? And then finally, as Keisha mentioned, you don't have to do all of this alone. Who's on your team? Build a team, right? Like, we are going to talk today as well about the coronavirus and tax tips. Get a good accountant. This pandemic has created, a lot of challenges, but a lot of opportunities, right? So what actual benefits are available to you? Keisha talked about, as you deal with your cash flow, talking to a mortgage broker to maybe refinance. It's a good time to look at lowering all of your interest payments, maybe putting it all in the mortgage, revisiting your will. I mean, we didn't get a chance to talk about that. Revisiting your insurance. What do you need? What do you have? And then speaking to some of these other these other team members that you might want to bring on your team as well, an investment advisor, a banker, to help you if you're looking to sort of restructure some of the assets and some of the debt products that you hold. And of course, a real estate agent, maybe you're in a time where you want to downsize as a part of your worst case scenario plan. But find a trusted group of professionals that can help you make the most of the cash flow you're building, that could help you protect the cash flow you're building, and ask for referrals and ensure they can clearly articulate to you how they can add value to your circumstances. So, I usually offer people who are looking, seriously at their cash flow insurance plan, their risk protection plan. If you are interested, feel free to reach out to my team. We give away a 30-minute complimentary consultation for everybody who came today. So thank you so much. Thank you again, Stacey, for inviting me here today.
Thank you so much, Jackie. Phenomenal, and just really eye-opening. Great insights and information that we all need that's very useful. And our health is also our wealth, but this information can help to ease a lot of stress that we have from finances. So before I open it up to the Q&A, I know, Giselle, your hand is raised, but we're just going to go through the panel discussion, and then we're going to open it up to have some questions from all of you who are here today. So my first question, and Keisha, you can come back on screen. Maybe Jackie, you can stop sharing. Thank you. All right, so my first question is for Keisha. How can people change bad money habits like overspending and maxing out credit cards and not saving?
Okay, so in text language, I call it RME, Roma. So basically, I'm just saying shock factor. Just list all of your debt, and beside them, specify what you pay in monthly interest for the last 6 months or a year. So if you want to see how much money you're giving away, just do that. Just do that exercise. And if that doesn't change your mindset, or at least prompt you to want to change your mindset, then that's where the RME comes in, right? So it will outline how much money you're giving away and put in your family at a disadvantage, because you want to maximize all of your expenses. You don't want to spend more than you earn. So meaning have the budget and stick to it. So if you purposely have that budget, stick to it for 3 months, then it will become habitual. So just to add to that, once your credit starts improving and you're paying off your debt, that's when the banks will start coming and giving you more and more credit. You should, try not to get into further debt, right? So I would say shock factor. Figure out how much right now over the last 6 months you've paid in interest.
Okay, thank you for that. That's really helpful. My second question is for you, Jackie. What is the ideal age to get life insurance and or critical illness insurance? And what options are there for maybe folks who are older and have underlying health issues, or even young people who have underlying health issues? Because I know in our community, we have young people with sickle cell. And I'm sure that's probably a challenge with getting critical illness and insurance.
Well, I would say think of life insurance like credit. Once your credit is bad, it's hard to actually get it, right? So you want to get it when you're, like I always say to people, you want to apply for credit when no one thinks you need the money. You want to apply for life insurance when no one assumes you have any health issue and you don't have any health issue. So the sooner you can get life insurance, the better. It just means you have way more options. It'll be a lot more cost effective, and you have an opportunity to reduce the coverage as your situation changes, convert it, you have a lot more opportunities. So I think the earlier you can get it, the better. There's a lot of options now that are coming on the table through different insurance suppliers for people who have health risks. And, so there are definitely companies that are available out there. It depends on the health risk. I recommend that you deal with a broker, because a broker has more options for you. They can go to many companies and source out, very similar to dealing with a mortgage broker. They can source out, based on your health challenges, which company you should be looking at before you actually go and apply. Again, you'd want to do the same thing with the broker, right? Before you go and apply, you want to give them your circumstances, have them package your situation properly, and then say, these are the places we should apply who I think you'll get the best deal with. So you're not insurance shopping, applying and going through that process of being declined, have the insurance company have potentially more information on you than you want, that you can strategically look for coverage. So find a competent broker to deal with. Our company, we have an insurance brokerage, so we deal with all of the companies. So deal with somebody like that when you're looking for coverage and you have health risks. But be honest with them so they know exactly what they're dealing with, so they put you in the best scenario to get the coverage that you need.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. And the next question is for you, Keisha, about tax-free savings. What are some of the pros and cons of the tax-free savings, and are people taking advantage of it?
Well, not as much as they should. So a tax-free savings account really is, as the name suggests, it is tax-free. So all the money that you put in and all the interest that you've earned over the years the money is not taxable. So the room is the same despite your income. So that's one benefit. It doesn't matter how much money you make. For 2021, your tax-free savings room is going to be $6,000. That's added on whatever balance you have rolling forward. So another benefit is that it's flexible. When you have a money need, the withdrawal process is flexible, so you're not taxed when you withdraw the money. And although that too can be a disadvantage because it's not taxed and it's so flexible, people tend to raid it that's the first account that you raid, right? So the withdrawal, if you have that extra money, it won't impact any other government program. So it won't deduct or reduce your baby bonus or other government benefits that you're getting. And in the event of death, your beneficiaries won't necessarily have to pay tax on that because, again, it's tax-free. So on the con side, I would say, I did mention one already, but so it doesn't have any protection from creditors. So if you enter into bankruptcy, your tax-free savings is not protected as other product would be. So it could be used to clear those debt. So.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. That's a little known fact about that. Now let's turn to RSPs. For you, Jackie, can you just maybe clarify how that works and some of the pros and cons with the RSPs? Older folks I know say that, oh, there's so much withholding tax, I kind of regret it. Are there some ways to use it more effectively?
Yes. I would say for someone who is considering an RSP, because one of the biggest benefits of an RSP is for someone who's in a higher tax bracket. So I typically don't recommend RSPs for people earning under $60,000 a year, just because you kind of have to look at, what you would have paid in taxes versus what you get back. So as your income tax bracket gets higher, and for somebody who's in, the higher tax bracket, so you're in a 43, you're in a 40, you're in a 50% tax bracket, it's really compelling to get an RSP because let's face it, one of the things I love about the magic of being in finance is making your money multiply, right? So if I can, without having to work harder, right? So if I can actually get an RSP and I'm in a 43% or even a 40% tax bracket, for somebody who's in a 40% tax bracket, just to keep the math simple, for every dollar you put into an RSP, you get 40 cents on that, right? So you get the 40 cents and then you get the money invested, right? So that's powerful because that's money you didn't have to work for that you now actually have working on your behalf. So assuming you don't owe taxes, you put the dollar into the RSP, that gets invested, you have no taxes to pay because you're up and you're up on the up and up with CRA. So you get that 40 cents back. And you can use that 40 cents to pay off debt, put into your TFSA, hopefully, do something that'll help you secure your future. So that's what makes an RSP attractive, is that ability to multiply your money with it and leverage your cash flow. On the negative side is for people who get an RSP that didn't think about it strategically, like, okay, I'm in a lower tax bracket these years, so does it make sense to contribute to an RSP? Maybe I'll contribute to a TFSA. Now I'm in a higher tax bracket, I'll take advantage of it. The other issue is you get to retirement, that's considered income once you start pulling it. Or if you need to pull it out before, you have to pay, pay back that 40 cents that you got, and then gets added to your income as well. So it's get this double whammy. So you need to consider the RSP something to use strategically to help build your cash flow when you have higher income. And then think strategically as you get closer to retirement. What is it going to mean when I start pulling out the RSP? How is it going to impact the amount of income I'll have to actually report on my income taxes? Will it affect me getting other benefits if I'm a low income earner? So maybe it will mean if you're a low income earner, and I have clients come to me with this all the time, I now, because I'm showing this extra income, like for old guaranteed income supplement benefits, you have to earn under like 19,000 to qualify. So if you're having to pull that money out of your RSP at 71 because you're forced to start withdrawing at that time, that might mean you don't get access to the guaranteed income supplement, which is a shame because it's not like you have $1 million in your RSP, you know what I mean? So, be strategic in how you use RSPs. Make sure you work with someone who understands the tax implications of owning it, understands tax in terms of the impacts on your long-term, cash flow.
Mm-hmm. That's really helpful. Good clarification. Thank you so much. All right, so let's talk about, Keisha, wealth building mindset during a pandemic. What would be some of your suggestions on developing a wealth building mindset when it's hard, right? Because there's fear and uncertainty all around us.
So, as I touched base with that in my presentation, when I addressed each different groups, if you have a job right now, anywhere you're saving in terms of you're not driving to work anymore, so you can squeeze out an extra month of not changing your oils because it's not going anywhere. So anything any car payments, any child expense that you have savings on, just funnel that away into that cushion or that secure fund that we talk about, and always try to minimize your expenses and break even. Don't spend more than you earn.
Mm-hmm. Or don't put your hat where you can't reach it. That's how I was raised. Okay. Right. All right. Thank you. So moving along, Jackie, can you provide a few financial tips for recovering from an illness or dealing with an illness like cancer?
Yes. I often will talk about that in terms of the 3 C's of cash flow. So the 3 C's of cash flow, the first one is, how can I capitalize on whatever cash resources I have? So some of the cash resources that you might have could be, I might have, like sometimes people tell me, I have money, let's look at what you have. So they might have money in an insurance policy, like a whole life policy that they completely forgot about. I'm like, let's just go on, lift up the rug and see what's under there, right? So there might be an insurance policy. Another, cash that you might have that's hidden cash is, money potentially for like these, as Keisha was talking about, in furnishings that you're not using that you could potentially sell that could provide cash flow. So don't be, because that's just what I call bad debt sitting in your home, because furniture depreciates in value. And if you're not using it, that's money that could actually be creating cash flow for you. So how can I capitalize on cash? And it could be, maybe I need a side hustle to create additional cash, or rent out my basement for additional income. So you just kind of have to be serious about, providing yourself with as much cash flow as possible. And then the second is check in on your cash flow. Checking in on your cash flow is all about what Keisha was talking about. Now I'm in a scenario where I have cancer. What's my budget say? How should I be realigning my budget in terms of what are my new expenses? So redo your budget and then check in on your budget to make sure that you're sticking to this plan that you made, because no sense, it's kind of like the equivalent of dieting and never going on the scale to see how you're actually doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
Oh,
and then third, I'm only saying that this is my own issue. I've been dealing with, but let me not bore your audience with my own challenges. Finally, the third is credit checkup, right? So credit checkup is really important because lots of people don't know what their credit score is. And for you to borrow at reasonable rates, like Keisha was talking about, you need to know what your credit score says. Check out places that you can get your credit score for free, like Borrow Well, Credit Karma. You can go on those websites and register your credit for your credit score. You can get your credit sent to you on a regular basis. But the idea is you need to have at least 650 to get credit at all. Or the banks won't even look at you. So I'll urge all of you out there, do everything you can to protect your credit. It's your financial reputation, and it's what I call your access to OPM or other people's money.
Very good. Well put, well said. So for both of you, what can parents or even grandparents or even aunties, like I have 6 nephews, what can they do to teach kids about finances?
Okay, Auntie Stacy. So a lot of us are very guilty of giving our kids anything that they want, right? Especially if we ourselves are from humble beginnings, or we couldn't afford certain things when we were younger, or our parents couldn't afford certain things. So you ever heard of the term want not, waste not? Yeah, if you have any Caribbean background, I'm sure you've heard of it. So they need to learn how to work for the nice to haves. And so if you give them an allowance, I'll give you an example. If you give them an allowance for chores that they do, you want to teach them how to manage their money. And so you may think of having 4 jars, right? 1 jar is for what I need to save for later. So teach them how to save and build up their money. And if they started saving, when they get into that habit later on, it won't be a big deal for them to save. They will like seeing the money pile up. And have another jar for the essentials. So what is it that I need for my art class? I need that emery board. I need those markers. I need those stuff, right? And so those are your essentials. So the jar for the nice to have is what you use to splurge, right? So my daughter loves to ask for Robux to play a game. So to me, that's a nice to have, right? So because you want to do it in moderation. And then last but not least, you want to teach them to give. So they need to have that jar for the 10% to give to a less fortunate or to give to the church.
Very good. Jackie, did you want to add?
Yeah, I think you really summed it up really nicely. I usually say, try to teach your kids how to spend wisely, to save, to save and invest. So saving is something you do for the short term. Investing is something you do for the long term, and share, as Keisha was talking about. But I think one of the most important things we can do when it comes to teaching our kids about money is not hide from them when we're having real life money conversations in the home. My mother never did. I knew she never was rich because she made sure I did know that. Very recently, I heard Chris Brown having a conversation with, Jerry Seinfeld on, I don't know if any of you on this call has ever seen comedians getting coffee, comedians in cars getting coffee. But he was saying, because his kids say to him all the time, "Daddy, are we rich?" And he said, "No, I'm rich." so that they understand they need to go out there and make their own money, but we need to be prepared to have those conversations at the dinner table about finances. Talk about finances early and often. Do not let kids feel that you have this bank card that gives you unlimited resources. You want to talk to them about that and help them understand that money is limited. So encourage, build that financial IQ with your kids by talking about money often, helping them, encouraging them to ask you questions about money, getting them involved in the money conversations. When they get things like allowances, helping guide them about, what to do with it. This whole theory of save, spend, and spend, save, invest, and share. So that they get that concept really, really early. And as, Keisha was saying, and then, give them those tactics like putting money in a jar and, setting up a savings account. And talk to them about areas of finance that you're wanting to learn as well. Like you're the model that they see, right? So if you're a good example and they see that you're trying to improve your financial IQ and learn more, you're encouraging habits with them that you want to pass on.
Exactly. Wow, that's helpful. Thanks to
Yeah,
both of you.
that was actually, I just want to add to what Jackie said. I just brought back another thing that we always hear, monkey see, monkey do. So if they see that you go to the mall all the time and you just come with your fancy bags and shoes, that's what they're going to do, right? They're going to be a spender.
Right.
Yeah. It's so funny you say that, Keisha. I did many years ago, I did a financial literacy camp with a at-risk group in Jane and Finch. And I remember we talked about, the difference between needs and wants. And we went through the whole exercise. And initially kids were like, what? And then they got it. And so the parents were telling me that when they went to the store, they're like, what did you do to my kid? They're like, Mommy, is that a need or a want?
That's excellent.
Ever.
That is excellent.
It was awesome.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Now we do have some questions from our attendees here. There's one from Sister Brenda Reed. Hi, Sister Brenda. And her question is, do you have any information on different investments?
There's so many different investments. Right?
Yeah.
It's really hard to say, I'd be like stabbing in the dark here if I was trying to give you advice on different investments. Think about where, again, going back to that life stage. Are you young? Because you can use time to be your friend or time to be your enemy. Money that sits in an account, and women are very guilty of this. So I'm saying this for the guilty and innocent, but women are guilty of money sitting and collecting dust in their in accounts. So putting your money to work is important sooner rather than later, because if you don't use time for yourself, you're gonna have your money sit there being worth around the same, but costs of living going up. So the things you actually need, stuff that you buy at the grocery store, homes, your car, all of those costs going up and your money's worth the same. So do whatever you can based on your comfort with investing to put your money to work as much as possible.
Awesome. Keisha, do you have anything to add?
So I think Brenda added that she was 60, but
oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah, just as you were talking. So what I mentioned in my presentation too, this money management, wealth management journey that you're on, you think about the same GPS that I was telling you about, and Jackie alluded to it in terms of where you are. So if you are in Toronto and you want to come to Whitby, when you put in your Whitby address, it will look for your current location, right? And it will give you your map from where you are. And so likewise, when you meet with a financial advisor, that's the same thing that they will do. They will say, where are you in your life? And so at 60, usually at that point in time, you're trying to consolidate and make sure that you don't necessarily have a mortgage when you retire and things like that. So you have less time to recover. So people in their 60s tend not to have a high, like stock. It would be more safer. That's the time that you also will try to then be transitioning from your RSP and jumping into your TFSA and all of those things. So I would say work with a financial advisor to actually deal with your specific situation.
Yeah, because Brenda, how long before you retire? Do you have 5 years, 10 years? What's your overall financial situation? Do you have debt? What are some of the things that are keeping you up?
No, I have no debt, and I have about 5 years to go. I don't want to be doing it longer than that.
Mhm.
I love my
Yeah.
job, but I like to know, I have some money. I need a good place to invest it. I need someone that can steer me for the next 5 to 8 years with the investment.
Yeah, well, I mean, here's the thing: you're still going to live if all goes well, because women are actually the fastest rising demographic of centenarians. So we are likely to live a long time. So you still need your money to grow. It's just a question of what type of investments would we be talking about based on your risk tolerance that would make the most sense to help you grow at the same time. So that's a conversation we need to have. That's a much more specific conversation, but consider you're still needing investments to grow because you could still live a long time. And if you're going to retire at 65, obviously I'd have to understand a little bit more about how much of your capital that you have invested now you'd start to need to live on when you retire. So do you have a pension? There's a lot of other questions to
So I
get
need
to
to
the
come and
answer.
talk to you then. I need to make an appointment.
That would probably be the best way for us to have a much more robust conversation.
All right. Can you drop your number in the chat, please?
We'll be sharing all the details as to how to contact Jackie. And
all right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ms. Gamble.
Okay, no problem. Take care, Brenda.
No problem. We have a question about, some women tend to do emotional shopping that could wreak havoc in their budget or cash flow. How would you advise them?
Just stop. No, I'm kidding. Just say no. It's not a campaign. I think
right? Just say no.
Well, here's the thing. I think all of us are revisiting what we care about during this pandemic. Right. So first of all, stores aren't even open. So the only way that you'd be shopping is if you've been lured in, and some of us have been roped in by Amazon and those places where they're like, by the way, you should know, guys, that Amazon, these organizations have brought back that patent. And now I'm totally going to date myself for your call here, where if you go on their site, do you remember that music club that you'd get like these different CDs if you started your part of the club, Columbia House? You know how you'd get, if you pick a few and then you keep getting, and I know I'm dating myself. For some of you who don't understand what I'm talking about.
I still have CDs, I have tape.
Yes. So all of this to say, the Columbia House method, which is you ordered a few to start with, and then they start sending you, Amazon bought a patent that says if you go on their website and you order some of the things that you want, stuff you click on, they actually can send it to you, and then you just have to say no to it. Can you imagine?
That's why I don't shop there.
They haven't put that in place yet, which is why get your mind right, ladies. Mindset is the most important thing. How badly do you want financial freedom versus how badly do you care about that purse, shoes, or whatever that you bought? And this is a great time to re-examine what you care about, because some people feel a lot of shame that they aren't where they want to be and that the pandemic caught them financially off guard. Mm-hmm. So this is a time to rebuild and refresh and reprioritize and get your mind right, because mindset is the key to building wealth for the long term.
Exactly. Someone has a question about buying insurance for children. Is there a certain age to get it, when they're in the belly, when they're 10? Because I've heard various times.
I think based on your financial priorities and your cash flow, get it earlier rather than later.
Okay. Awesome. So what we're going to do in the interest of time is 3:17. We do have Jaden Medford, who's going to share his screen and go over what the federal and provincial government has. And I know navigating government can be very tricky, very complex. So he put together a very nice presentation to help all of us see what is available from the government and government programs. So Jaden, if you could be ready and turn on your
screen now.
And introduce yourself, where you're going to school, what you're studying.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jaden Medford. I'm a student right now at McGill University in Montreal, and I study political science and economics. And thank you so much, Keisha and Jackie, for all that advice, because as a student myself with incurring debt that I'll soon have to pay off, it's really good advice to start to know now. So yeah, thank you. And I'm going to show you guys just a presentation of just the basic provincial and federal benefits that you can get while this pandemic is going on. So let me just share my screen. Okay. Okay, so I'm just going to go, it's a brief run through of the basic provincial and federal government financial benefits, and then just tips to survive during this health pandemic. It's also just important, just a disclaimer that we don't go so much into like the actual application process. So we've prepared a list of resources like links that you can select after the presentation so that you can like learn more about it. But this is just to give a basic run through. So just the first thing I wanted to say is just ask for help. Don't hesitate to contact your local member of parliament for any assistance you have or questions about these programs or how to apply. And they exist, so don't feel that because you're in a situation during COVID-19 that there isn't a benefit for you, because they have all these benefits that they're coming out with now that it could definitely fit your situation. So they're there. So firstly, I'll just go through the provincial Ontario benefits. The one I wanted to put firstly was the financial support, because I thought this one would be the most just generally applicable for anyone who has like lost their job or is struggling due to COVID-19 reasons. The Ontario Emergency Assistance Program offers $733 a month for a single person, and then that can go up if you have any children, any other circumstances where the government might see that you need more support. And so there are up to 48 days of support, and this is different from the federal. So just knowing that this is specifically Ontario, so you have to live in Ontario. It has to be that you were affected by COVID-19. It could either be that you were evicted from your home, because like as we know, evictions are on the rise. So just be mindful of that. And if you're worried about your safety as well, it's if you're losing income, say, actually, I'll get to if you're self-employed, but say just if you are running a home business and you're worried that people you let in would affect your safety, that is one of the reasons you could use to be eligible for this financial support. So then how to apply, the 4 basic steps that you'll have to look into the website just to get more information. And we're going to supply the link. First one is just to gather your necessary information and submit. Ontario Works reviews your application, then your local Ontario Works office will contact you, and if you're eligible, you will get the payment either by direct deposit or check. And this one I just wanted to cover firstly because support for children and youth, just an aside, this is a very gendered topic because as we know, women's labor is very devalued and it's often informal and unpaid. So compared to men's labor, which is often formal in the public and paid, these are just like the systemic barriers that we have in our society. So this will be very important if we want to have more equity just in the future, just as an aside. So what they offer is child welfare. So youth in care up to 21 can now be eligible for like child welfare, whereas before I think it was 18 or so. So just if you have any, I saw some comments, some people have children that are around this age. So if your child is nearing 21 or is at 21, you could benefit from this program. And so I've offered a couple of the links here that we also have on the newsletter later on. Also, children with special needs. This is a growing, it's getting more attention to in like the Ontario government, and they're offering more programs. So it could be also like family counseling, in-person service, and it's also going to, of course, be in accordance with the health regulations of COVID-19. And this is also another big program that Ontario is giving out because low-income energy assistance and the energy assistance program, because I think many people have come to see that electricity, Wi-Fi, all these are very expensive, and these are one of the first expenses to be the most burdensome in cases of COVID-19 where you've lost your job or anything like that. So they offer the low-income energy assistance program, LEAP, and then the COVID-19 energy assistance program, KEEP or SEEP. And so that can offer you $500 for electricity bills, $600 if your home is heated, and $500 for natural gas bills. And for this KEEP, it's the whole program is $9 million to residential customers. So there's lots of room to. There's lots of people who are going to be eligible to apply for this, and it just started recently in January. and it could be ending soon. So I think in like a couple months, they want everyone to be applying to this pretty quickly if you are having problems paying off electricity bills. And then, so I'll just go into the federal benefits now. This is a list of all the federal benefits that are related to COVID. And I just wanted to emphasize that Canada Emergency Response Benefit and the Canada Emergency Student Benefit, which I know kind of well, they're all closed. So they don't have them offered anymore. So some people think that CERB is still the primary subsidized income plan. This is not true. So it's like CRB. And I believe they're also kind of doing a hybrid thing with unemployment insurance and CRB. I think it just had to do with logistics of who was operating the benefits. I think it was either Service Canada or the Canadian Revenue Agency, and now they're trying to consolidate it more so that EI and CRB, there's a greater distinction of like whether your job was lost due to COVID or for other reasons. And so I'll touch on a few of these programs which I found were the most important. The first one being support for business owners. So that's either employers or self-employed people. For employers, they have the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy, CEWS, which can cover up to 75% of employees' wages for eligible employers. It's available until June 2021, and I think it's been around for a while because that was what they were using right as people were getting laid off. So it's a little bit old, but yeah, that you'd have to see what kind of your eligibility looks like nowadays. And then there's also the extended work sharing program from 38 weeks to 76 weeks employers affected by COVID-19. And this is an old program, but they've just tried to adapt it more to COVID-19. And then for self-employed individuals, Canada Response Benefits, Recovery Benefits. So this is just the basic one, but it can be lumped in there because a lot of self-employed people can apply for it as well. The Canada Recovery Sickness Benefit, which I believe Stacey went over in the previous workshop, but just in the context of, self-employed individuals, say, the example I had said before, where a person is running a business from their home and they're worried and they've contracted COVID-19 as a result of their business, or they're just worried about contracting COVID-19 because they're self-employed and because it requires in-person contact. This would be good to check out your eligibility because you can get up to $500 per week for a maximum of 2 weeks. And also for people who are self-isolated, so that's just good to keep track of. And then also finally the Canada Recovery Caregiving Benefit, which also provides $500 a week, up to 26 weeks per household. And people who are unable to work for at least 50% of the week because they must care for a child of under the age of 12. And this has to do a lot, like the same with child care, how that's being subsidized. It has to do a lot because schools and care facilities are closed. And this can be very damaging to the informal economy that we have. So lastly, I wanted to just, if you hadn't known about it before, this is a really good organization just to be aware of, the Business Development Bank of Canada. So what they do, I'll just give like a quick summary. They're not governmental, but they work closely with government and they work in financing. It could be enterprising advice. They offer capital loans to transition or just startup loans. So this is a really good, if you have a business and you're looking for support, this is a really good safe for business organization. They're here to help. And so I chose two of their programs that I thought would be the most, helpful. The first one is the Highly Affected Sectors Credit Availability Program, or HASCAP Guarantee. And I just have in bold there, the main difference between this one and this one is that this one provides operational liquidity and cash flow, whereas the other one would provide payroll costs caused by the current economic situation. So it's good that when you're looking at these two programs, know which one you're generally looking for. If you're looking for operational liquidity, this is your one. If you're looking specifically for payroll costs, that's this one. And so ensures continuity of operations for the HASCAP. And just a note there that it can't be used to pay out other existing loans or to pay dividends. So there are some eligibility requirements that you have to go through, and just knowing how to manage the loan once you get it. And then this one is the EDC Business Credit Availability Program, the BCAP guarantee, which is for the payroll costs caused by the situation. Flexible terms, so you can repay over 5 years and benefit from 6 months of principal payments, postponements, guaranteed loans on the new operating line of credit or a new term loan. And your eligibility is mostly falls if your business is Canadian based and began operations and in operations as of March 1st, 2020. So these are the main programs I really encourage you to check out. In the newsletter, we have the link for the BDC, so you can also check. They have other programs, but I just chose these two as maybe the most helpful in this time, this economic situation. But also, if you need, set up an appointment with BDC, and you can also get more advice there on specifically business related matters. So thank you for watching. And also, I just wanted to add that we have a Enter to Win survey. So if you complete the short survey, you can perhaps win, and your feedback is greatly appreciated to the Olive Branch of Hope. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jaden, for that phenomenal presentation. It's really helpful. And just to remind everybody, when we send out our thank you email, you will get a copy of the presentation. You'll also get links with the helpful phone numbers that are relevant. So this is really good. I think it's always important that we give youth in our network a platform, you know, to show what they can do and put together. And I think you did a phenomenal job putting that together, Jaden. So applause there for you in that. So before we wrap up, I do want to invite the president and executive director, Ms. Leila Springer, just to say a few words before I say thank you and we wrap up for the afternoon. So Ms. Leila, over to you.
Yes, hello everyone. Thank you so much, Stacy and your team, for doing such an awesome job today. This has been very, very informative, and I'm so glad that we actually did this. So really, thank you, Stacy and your team. Thanks to my friend Jackie for coming on again and sharing her knowledge. And Keisha, I met you for the first time. You did phenomenal. And Jaden, I'm so proud of you. I was sitting here saying, gee, I'm so proud of the students that that Stacy chose to work with her. You're all doing a phenomenal job. So thanks to all of you for help making this event a very successful one. And to all of you that signed on today, we had over 40 people register for this workshop, and I am so pleased that so many of you have stayed on to the end, because this information is so important. And I love the fact that Jackie really talked about insurance as much as she did, because so many in our community don't have insurance, and they don't seem to think it's important. But for those of us that understand the importance of it, especially those of us that that may have had a critical illness experience, we know the importance of it. So I am so happy today that we were able to do this workshop. Please know that we recorded it, and it's going to be on the Olive Branch of Hope YouTube channel in a few days, so that if anybody wanted to go back and look it over again because you didn't get something, something missed you, or you missed something, or you know somebody that that weren't able to attend even though they registered, and you want to point them to the YouTube channel, it will be there in a couple of days. So again, thank you, Stacy, thank you, Keisha, thank you, Jackie, and Jaden. Thanks to all of you for doing such an awesome job. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. And much appreciated to everyone who took the time out of their afternoon to join us. I trust you found it insightful and some valuable information. And please stay connected with the Olive Branch if you're on social media. They are on Twitter, they are on Instagram, they're on Facebook. But I do want to announce our next event is going to be on March 11th at 7 p.m. We will send out details. And the topic will be Rebuild Your Physical Strength with some fitness tips for working out at home, because we want to stay physically healthy. And at the end of the month, we're going to be talking about how you can optimize your health through clean, green eating, right? And getting that optimal nutrition that we need to stay healthy. So thanks again to all of you. It was a pleasure to be your host and moderator. And I'm going to sign off.
Thank you.
Bye, Stacy. Bye, everybody. It was
Bye.
wonderful.
Bye.
Thanks for coming, Sister
Oh,
Brenda.
you're welcome. I've gotten so much information.